Hot off the heels of the sad and tragic backstory of Trafalgar Law and Don Quixote Rocinante comes the return of the massive war epic known as the Dressrosa arc. I'm gonna be perfectly blunt here. This week's episode of One Piece was a glorified recap of everything that's going on in the Dressrosa arc at the present, reminding the viewers who's fighting who and where everyone's at. But does that make this a bad episode? I say no. This week's episode was a lot of fun because there was a lot of new action that we haven't seen before and some pretty cool revelations, like when Law is fighting against Doflamingo and reveals that he's a D. Of course, this completely pisses off Doflamingo, but that's not gonna stop him from using his fabulous rainbow-colored strings. The return of the Dressrosa arc sees the return of the very weird, disgusting, but slightly infectious and cool Don Quixote crime family, and we get to see who they're all going to be fighting against, and honestly, just being reminded about what other battles are going to be coming in the Dressrosa arc gets me really excited to be a One Piece fan, because there are going to be some really cool surprises coming up, and this week's episode does a really great job of reminding the viewers of what's going down. It also is really good for viewers who decided to jump off ship and decided to take a break from the series. If they want to come back, this is a really great jumping on point, because it does a great job of reminding the viewers what's going on, what happened to Rocinante, what happened to Law, why they're fighting, why they're trapped in the birdcage, and all of the important characters which encompass the entire Dressrosa arc. Not to mention, it does it with a lot of style, pizzazz, cyborgs fighting man-babies. It's got everything. Some of the major action scenes from this week's episode, which I think were pretty awesome, was Law versus Doflamingo. Everything here looked pretty swift and very fast. I loved the color of Doflamingo's strings, which were all rainbowified. Not to mention, Law was just awesome this week, especially because he has sent out his declaration of war against Doflamingo's face. That's right, he is going to be the one that will pull the trigger that Corazon would not. Not only that, but he actually hits him with a big injection shot at the end of the episode, which was pretty freaking badass. Luffy is continuing to battle against the clone of Doflamingo and Bellamy, and even gets one massive shot against Doflamingo's face in this week's episode, which was definitely a big highlight. I also still love the battle between Kyros and Diamante, especially because Diamante is actually applying his devil fruit powers to the ground, and everything is rippling away like a big flag, and because of this, Kyros is having a really hard time standing up and fighting, and the dude's already missing a leg, so pretty dick move, Diamante. I think my favorite scene from this week's episode, though, was probably when we went back to Frankie versus Senor Pink. They're basically just continuing to deck each other in the face continuously. I love after Frankie actually hits Senor Pink, he just remarks, "Did I just feel a breeze?" And then suddenly this cute, over-stylized cat walks in, the one that actually Senor Pink was helping, and it just puts on the most ridiculously adorable face, which causes Frankie to tear up. They definitely have one of the weirdest battles of the entire series going on right here. Leo is still trying to find Princess Mancherry, Bartolomeo, Nico Robin are still fighting against countless people. You have frickin' Lao Ji who's going toe-to-toe with Don Chinchao. Cavendish is getting ready to fight against frickin' Gladius who's getting ready to blow up everything. Vice is crushing giants. Dellinger's fighting against that one dude who can cause explosions with his fists. Not to mention Zoro versus Pico, which is still pretty frickin' awesome. Every single time they go to these guys, I really wish there was just a whole episode dedicated to them, but we'll get to that one eventually. Really, this whole episode is just a big reminder of what everybody's doing and all the badass stuff that's going down, and I think it did a pretty good job of that. And I even love that one scene when they were going through all of the Don Quixote crime family and naming them all one by one. I love how when they got to Lao Ji, they actually gave him a golden shining G. Nice attention to detail. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of One Piece? Like I said, it's basically just a big recap, but I thought it was a really fun recap because there was a lot of new action that we haven't seen quite yet, and I think that's the best way to actually do something. Not to mention there were some pretty important details with Law actually telling Doflamingo that he was a D. The secret is out and Doflamingo is completely pissed off, and this is going to lead to a massive big fight, which is going to be coming up in the next episode, not to mention more battles from everyone else. Really, from this point on, it's just pure, non-stop fighting until the end of Dressrosa. On the technical side of things, this week's episode still looked pretty clean and consistent for the most part. Of course, there were a few scenes where they would take a shot and just sort of reuse it over and over and over, kind of old school Dragon Ball style. But really, I think that just sort of adds to the appeal of this series, which is very similar to Dragon Ball in many senses. What I will say is I like this episode a lot, and I can recommend it to One Piece fans, especially those who haven't watched the series in a long time. This is a really great time to jump back into the series, because exciting things are getting ready to happen, so let's get excited for the rest of the Dressrosa arc. Otherwise, this was still just kind of an average episode of One Piece, but I still liked a lot of the action scenes. I'm kind of an action junkie, and I'm a One Piece fan, so I am a little biased. So I'm going to give this week's episode a 4 out of 5. It's a 4 out of 5 for me. For most people, I think it's going to be a 3 out of 5, but that's just my take on it. So check it out, One Piece fans. Whether you're reading the manga or watching the anime, check out this week's episode. You might see something you like. Before you guys leave today, I want to hear your thoughts about this week's episode of One Piece. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Were you upset by the recap? Did you have a favorite action scene or character who showed up in today's episode? And what do you want to see from the rest of the One Piece anime series? Please tell me in the comment section below. Thanks for watching the review. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and follow us on social media. You guys should also check out our weekly podcast show, The Powerful Nerdcast. Remember, you can also download that show for free at iTunes and at RogueIntel.com. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby.